Everywhere we go, people want to know who we are and where we come from. So who are you and where do you come from?
So I'm Nicole and I'm from Recruitment.
And who else?
I'm Natasha and I'm originally from Montpellier Drive.
And then just due to the sensitive nature of the topic that we're going to talk about, we do have somebody, we have Mary, and Mary is off camera, but she will be talking and telling us her story as well through this. So Natasha, first of all, you and I got introduced through Instagram and you sent me a message one day. What did you send me the message about?
I just explained that I had recently taken up a post in foster and social work department and we were running a recruitment drive, a recruitment campaign for foster carers. The foster carers that we have at the minute, the count is very low. So really what we're doing is just trying to put a campaign out there and to remind people of the different types of foster carers. Different type of foster care, I should say, and that there are kids in every area that are in vulnerable situations and do need somebody to care for them.
Okay, and Nicole, we'll start with you, and then Natasha, you can jump in, and then we'll talk to Mary as well. So this is a very different podcast. It's the first one that we've done that I've in a long time that I've had a group of people here. So there is nerves between us all, but we'll get through it. Okay, we will get through it. Nicole, tell me about yourself. Tell me first of all, how old were you went into foster care, and the reasons probably why you went into foster care.
Yeah, so I was around 7 when I went into foster care. So it was a bit of a dramatic process that happened all quick, and I was quite young, so I didn't really remember a lot of it, but it would have happened because both of my parents, biological parents, were heroin users, and they had been for my whole life. I didn't know really anything different. So what had happened was, it was a normal day. I was in their house. They lived in Clondalkin at the time, and the house was always, it was one of them old houses where, it was real airy, kind of like there was no carpet on the stairs. It was that thick wood with kind of gaps in between. It was real kind of old house, and like that as well. They couldn't look after me, let alone themselves. So it was never really felt like home. It was always like a shell of a house, really. So I remember I used to just play out all the time. I'd be very rarely in the house. But when I was in the house, I was always asking, could I bring friends in? Because I always felt quite lonely. And I was an only child up until the age of 7 anyways, until my biological parents had another sibling anyway for me. But like that as well, we went up to the house and went up to the bedroom. And they were always, when I say they, sorry, my biological parents, always in the sitting room. I had guests in the sitting room, and the sitting room was always closed. The door was always closed for obvious reasons. Like now, as a grown up, you realise, what goes on behind closed doors. But so I would always brought my friends upstairs. So I remember I was upstairs in the room, and I, like that, I don't know, it was just funny, like, because there was no carpet, I used to always run around my bare feet anyways. I suppose the first, one of the kind of signs of neglect, when you look at, why kids go into foster care, you're always thinking of like, that neglect, that lack of clothing, or, the lack of being, the care really aspect of it. But anyway, I was running around the bedroom, and I actually stood on one of the heroin needles. So it was kind of like down in the gap of the wooden floor, like in their bedroom. So I remember stepping on it, and straight away I knew, I heard like the crunch, and I knew something was wrong. And it was weird because at the age of 7 I was already the adult, I was already the parent. So straight away it wasn't a cry, and my reaction was, get these friends out of this house, they don't need to see what's going on here. At 7 I would have been quite mature, yeah. And everyone I kind of meet would always say I act more mature than I actually am. So my first thought was, get these out of the house, like, and I can remember so clearly. And it's only when I look at further down the line, when we get to it, going to college, that you do realise, the own psychology, that you hang on to that kind of like the trauma of it.
Do you know what? So it's just, Aria is 7. She was 7 this week, and I can't even comprehend her little brain having the thought of going, I need to get my friends out of here because I'm in a very serious situation.
I know. And when you think back to it, I'm like, how did I even think that quick on the spot? Like, as an adult, I wouldn't be able to think that quick. I'd be screaming. I've no pain threshold whatsoever. So my first thought was to get the girls out of the house, so which I did. And then I would have looked for Mam straight away. Mam would have been the kind of my first go-to. She would have been the more sane parent out of the two, if you like, more in her conscious state than he would have been. So like that, it's a bit of a horrible twist to it, but she was like straight away, or she had that parently instinct. She wanted to call the guards, wanted to run the ambulance, get me safe, whereas him, on the other hand, there wasn't that. It was that going, we need to get whatever's in this house kind of out of the house, or you're gonna have people speculating, or we don't want to draw attention to the house and stuff like that. But she was adamant, and I remember as a child, I don't remember what she said, but I remember the look and the fear in her face, kind of going, no, like, this is our child, like, we need to. And it was kind of the first time I'd kind of seen that parently instinct in her. Now, she was more than him, like, I mean, she, like, you know, if there was days where I hadn't been fed, she'd always come home with something for me in her pocket, or it's like, you know, if there was that kind of poverty aspect there, and I can remember, like, you know, I can remember giving me treats and stuff, you know, that kind of way, or having stuff there for me.
Just bring it back for me, right? Because I know we want to get the points across, but also, like, talk to me about the fact, like, if you didn't eat, where did you go? Like, was there schools? Like, you know, what?
See, I don't remember going to school a lot. I don't. Personally, from what I remember from my foster carer telling me, my foster mum, I call her mum, by the way, so that's why I don't want to confuse people on here, but I do call my foster mum. Like, she would have told me that, you know, I would have been quite behind in school. I would have only basically started school in first class when I was 7 with them, straight into first class in a new school, because my attendance was that poor that I, even to today, it sounds very silly and people are going to laugh at me, but I struggle to tell the time. I, like, everything has to be digital for me, because like that I would have missed out on them, you know, them imperative kind of years of telling time. Numbers and maths to me is just absolutely terrible. I work in a school and I'm like, I could never be a teacher because I can't do maths, even the senior infant level. But yeah, so
don't ever worry about people laughing at you.
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Don't ever worry about people you've been through so fucking much.
Yeah.
Like, don't ever worry about people laughing at you.
No, it's more even that, like, when I say my sisters, because obviously I haven't said it yet, but I come from a big family of foster siblings, but they're my siblings, and like they just slag me all the time. Nicole, what time is it? Can you tell? Look at that clock there, and they tease it and torment it out me. But I know it's from a loving place there. But yeah, so like that, I don't really remember, to be honest with you. And a lot of that, though, from my studies now, I realise that it's trauma and the brain, the way the brain works, that the brain hides a lot, like, because the trauma takes over, the brain hides a lot. Like, even my foster care was showing me pictures and stuff, like, I'd be like, I don't remember that, but yeah, I remember stepping on that needle and that day and everything that happened, the smell of the house, the noise of the
Do you remember
wood.
the smell of the house? Yeah,
I can remember the smell of the house. It always smelt like that stale cigarette, like a pub, like walking into a pub and like a stale cigarette. But I can always remember the smell. And
how does it affect you when you smell? Do you get the smell now? If you walked in somewhere, if you got that smell, how would you react to it?
Do you know what? Not so much. It used to affect me, like, I suppose, like in my teens, I'd be like, get that smell, going, where did that come from? But I think, honest to God, hand on heart, I do think, obviously having the loving foster carers and family that I have, and from going to college myself and learning all about it, that I just have more of an understanding now that nearly the nostalgia of the smell is nearly, I wouldn't go as far as saying comforting, but I'm like, that makes sense to me now, why I'd, you know, recognise the smell and stuff, yeah. But, so the ambulance was called, and Tusla would have come to the hospital. They would have been brought in from attention into the hospital and would have been signed straight into care from that day on, yeah.
And had they ever been around before? Had anyone reported your mum and dad? Had anyone?
Not that I'm aware of, no. But I couldn't see why not. You know, it was the house where people kind of always came and went, you know, that kind of way. So I'm not too sure, to be honest with you, but I couldn't see why not. They were known in the area, you know, really? and you know, in the area as well, like, you know, heroin use was quite prevalent as well. So
really,
yeah.
And do you know what? It's beyond me. Natasha's phone is going off too.
That's a reminder to give me son his medicine.
Oh, Jesus. Will it go off all the time now?
I need to turn it off.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll just get Paul to come down. And where is it? And I'll get it. Hang on.
It's in my pocket.
I'll get it there. Don't worry. I'll get it.
Sorry, I should have made sure.
Okay. No, don't worry. You're still on camera, so don't worry about it. That's where here it is. Is this it?
Yeah.
There we go.
I thought it was in my pocket.
Yeah, don't worry. These things happen, lads. We're live recording, so we're fine. So I'm just going to, again, let's just continue there now with it. So you said there before that, though, you said about your dad wanting to run around and clean the house, like clean the gear out of the house and stuff like that. Did he? Like, is that what he did? And
to be honest with you, it's all blank from there. I just remember, you know, and I think the reason why my mum would, like, my biological mum, like, her response that would stick to me is because it was the only kind of time where I'd had that little bit of comfort and love. I was like, she actually does care, like, she wants to, you know, help me. So I always kind of clung to that moment. So it was always blank until I met, you know, my foster parents. My guardian angels.
Is that what you call them?
That's what I call it.
And before we go on with that, like, I just think you said there, Natasha, Nicole, you said it, and I just want to ask both Mary and Natasha, is it a case that with children going into care, are they always like little adults? Because they have to be.
Generally, yeah.
I'd be different. I took in one as a baby.
Okay.
So he's grown with us. You know, he's 4 now, so he's grown with us. We've taken him in as a baby, but I've never looked back.
Really?
Do you know, like, well, he's blended into the family now. He's part of the family. I wouldn't even look on it as I'm fostering. I just look on him as he's part of the family. I just never think of fostering him. It's just, he's part of the family.
And you said earlier on about the joy that he brings, because we just have to be really careful with your story, because, as we said, for confidentiality reasons, but just the joy that he brings into your life.
Oh, definitely. Since the day he came in, yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way now. Do you know what I mean? Thought it was finished right now, to be honest with you. But in saying that, I'd do it all over again.
Would you?
Yeah.
And did you ever think of fostering before he came along?
No. I had a career, a great little career on the path. I even had a pension. No, I had a career, so as far as I was concerned, my kids were reared and I was just going to have grandchildren and that was the end of it. But I didn't think I'd be rearing the grandson, do you know what I mean? But things happened and he came into our life and he landed on my doorstep, basically. Who said you don't have to leave home for a baby? But he landed on the doorstep and, as I say, we've never look back. We don't look at him. I don't look at him as being fostered. The people in the house where we live don't look at him as being fostered. He's just one of us now.
And does he call you nanny?
Yeah. Definitely he calls me nanny. But I have a younger daughter and he calls her mammy.
Ah, okay.
But he has to have somebody to call mammy, do you know what I mean? So, because she already has somebody, a child, and he's listening to that child calling her mammy. So, and that's because he's grew up with us from a baby, a brand new baby. Just always took it that's his mammy. You know, as I says, we don't look at it as fostering at all.
That's mad.
It's just, it shows how a baby's brain can be, you know, shaped and moulded, and if they know no different and they're welcomed. And any of the foster parents that I've been in touch with over the last couple of months, they would all say the same thing, very much what you say to me all the time, Nicole. They're not my foster family, they're my family. And everybody, you know, that I've come across, anybody that I've had contact with or even picked up the phone to check in with, they very much say the same, you know, they're part of the family. We don't see it as in, you know, we wouldn't describe them as this is our foster child, it'd be these are our children. Very much so.
And Mary, does your daughter live in the house, which is...
Oh, we're all there together,
Yeah. And then, so if she was to move out or anything like that on him, like, God...
She'd not going anywhere. I tried to get her out. It didn't happen, let me tell you. No, it's not. No, and we've spoke about that, you know, if she, because like that, she has her own child. So if they ever got their own place, but she says, no, Ma, I'm not going anywhere. I couldn't leave him behind, she said, you know. And then she wouldn't be taking him with me because I'd have a heart attack. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just a win-win that it's working out perfect and under the roof, like the way we go to things.
Yeah.
We've everything sorted down to a T. You know what I mean? So things just... But we'd never, ever consider him as being fostered. And like that, we never tell anybody, like, oh, you know, I have him fostered.
Yeah.
Never, ever. He's just my grandson and that's the end of it.
And then would you say to, and I'll come back to Nicole to you in a few minutes, what would you say to anyone else out there? Like, he was obviously very lucky that his nanny stepped in. Do you know what I mean? So, like, if anyone else is out there in your own age, and we won't say how old you are, but you're a granny.
I'm old.
But would you say, like, because I think, fortunately, in Ireland right now, people like myself, I rely so heavily on the grandparents to mind my children, to bring them to school and after school and all that. So we're all in a situation like that. So I think then if I said to my mother-in-law, you can have them for 2 weeks, she'd probably throw them back at me. But what is it like? What would you say to other women your own age? Like, say, would you like to do this if this kind of landed at their door? Is it hard?
It was hard at the very beginning under the circumstances in which he was born and stuff. He was a child that never slept, that cried constantly, was hospitalised after his birth, you know, and stuff like that for quite a while. So when we got him home, it was sleepless nights. This child just didn't know what sleep was. So we done everything possibly what we were taught. You know, I saw help. You know, there is help out there, the sleep clinics, so, you know. And we saw help, we got the help we needed, and it's only now lately, to be honest with you, it's probably the past year that he's actually sleeping. Really? But he never slept. We had to rotate sleep. My daughter do say the night, so to speak, but I'd get up, say, about 4 or 5. I'd take over to let her go to bed for a few hours because she has to go to work, so I'd have the baby all day. But I have a good family support unit. So they take her for a few hours during the day while I got the house done, you know, and little bits done. So he has a lot of support there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They say it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah, and I do believe it, because I'd say without the support, also I had the support from tusla, between key workers and social workers and, you know, home visits and stuff. I had all that, and that did help, you know. They are there at the end of a phone line, tusla, you know, regardless what hour of the day, at night you're ringing, and they are good for the help, but they were for me anyway, like. But I'd say, yeah, go for it. Now, if someone had said this to me probably 5 years ago, I'd have probably laughed at you, say, no, I'm done, I'm retired, like, do you know what I mean? But now, I just wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't even know what like be life without him in the house, like, do you know what I mean? Like, if he's gone for a few hours, it's so quiet. It's like, Jesus, what do I do? What, you know what I mean? Like, I'm lost kind of thing. So now it's probably even gotten to the stage where I need him more than he needs me.
A new lease of life.
Do you know what I mean? Probably a midlife crisis I'm going through, I don't know. But yeah, no, I'd never look back. And I would say, yeah, go for it. Go for it.
Do it.
It's the love that you give, and it's the love that you get back. You know, he's very loving, very, very loving, and grateful. No matter what you buy him, it's, oh, thanks, Nanny, you know. But yeah, I'd definitely go for it. Definitely. I've no room in the house anymore. If I had, I probably would.
And I'm sure they probably asked, hadn't they, Mary?
Yeah. But like that, I've no room at the moment. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I'd say I would do if I had the room. You have to have the room.
Yeah.
You know, they have to have their own room and stuff like that. But yeah, I'd go for it, definitely.
Okay, brilliant. And come here, let's go back then to Nicole. So Nicole, bring it back. So that day in the hospital, because Mary, I think, going to have a heart attack by asking her a question. Going back to the day in the hospital then, and then what happened? Like, in that moment, what happens? Like, you know, who the hospital ring and say what?
I suppose it would have been under the circumstances because, you know, of, you know, the heroin needles. So obviously there's a sign of drug abuse in the home. I'm sure then school, I don't know what the certain rules are, but I know when a child misses a certain amount of days in school, tusla are informed. So I thought there could have been visits to the house that I was been on to be honest with you. But like that, that's as far as my memory goes. It's like then, that's when my life kind of began. And like, that's when I started. But I also forgot to mention that in between that, I did have, so my younger sibling was a couple of months old in the house at the time. So I think that was my biggest fear. Obviously was, as we said, getting them out, getting the friends out of the house, you know, working with Mum. And then when I got to the hospital and the fear started sinking, going, okay, it looks like I'm going somewhere else and she's been left behind. And that was my biggest fear, because at the age of 7 I was also, and it's funny because I don't remember this, but this is what I'm told through like family members that would have visited me and stuff like that, that I would have, you know, at the age of 7 when she was a couple of months old, I would have, you know, been making the bottles, but I would have put, you know, litre of milk from the fridge into a bottle, put it in the microwave, heat it up for her, and she would have been fed like that, you know, that kind of way. But like that, I was lucky enough then that she only remained with my biological parents for a couple of months, and she was put into relative care with my granny. So my dad's, my biological dad's mum, which I was thankful for then. But like that, I was just, it was the fear, You know, my foster mom was very good. When she first got me, she would have bought me a little phone. It was a Nokia at the time, I remember. She even bought me a little Groovy Chick cover case for it and stuff. So like that, I could ring and say, oh, how's my sister doing? And can you put her on the phone? No. The baby was a few months old. Like, just to hear that and to kind of check in. So once I kind of knew where she was going to be and where that she got kind of like, at the time, it was like a new home, the relief kind of sat in, because I was thinking going, I know what goes on in that home. I know that, you know, if both of them are asleep, which I used to call asleep, even though at the time I knew it was when they were, you know, out of it, and they couldn't look after me. I was looking after my sibling, and it's like, if I'm not there, who's going to be there? I think that's what killed me the most. It wasn't even leaving my biological parents. It was knowing that this vulnerable little child is there with no one to care for. So
you're a vulnerable little child.
Yeah, that's the thing. I talk about it as if, I was 7. So, yeah, but like that's where my kind of parental role would have kind of kicked in, that I would have been a parent to my parents and a parent to my sibling as well. So, and I think even still to today, I'm in touch with my biological mum, and we'd either be friends or I'd be the parent. There's still no boundary there, you know.
Yeah.
It's still, you know, looking to me for advice rather than me looking to her for advice.
And we'll come on to that in a minute, because I really want to know about that as well. Tell me then, like, these people arrive that you don't know, and you go to the house. Like, as a 7-year-old, like, I don't even know, do you remember it?
I don't remember, to be honest with you now, but I do, you know, remember the love and the warmth and the welcome that I got. Now, these beautiful people, my foster parents, have, like, very similar to Mary. They were in their late 50s. They had raised 7 children of their own and took me in, so they were definitely finished with their rearing. And like, they had to start all over again with me, sending me to school, the uniforms, the lunches and everything else. And I just, like, would have never felt more welcome, you know. I mean, at the time, forgive my maths, as I said, at the time when they took me, their youngest would have been maybe about to leave secondary school. So yeah, there's a good gap between us. So like that, they were basically finished, you know. But like that, they even welcomed me. So there's 5 girls and 2 boys. Okay. So the girls would have really, like, you know, dressed me up, did my hair, brought me out in the pram, showed me around, you know. They would have really, like, brought me around as if I was their doll, like, you know, and showed me around and stuff. But yeah, like, I think I like that. I think from being an adult so early on, that I just adapted really well. Like, I feel like I did. Like, even the new school, the new uniform, I was actually excited for the fresh start. I was excited to make friends and no one to know who I am, or to be like, oh, that's the girl that gets left outside the school gates till all hours, or you know. So I just, I enjoyed it. And even though it should be for a child, it should be harder to start in first class, like, you know, when everyone has known each other since junior infants. But it was actually fine. I felt like I slotted in very well. But then again, obviously, you have when foster care comes into it then, so you don't necessarily have that normal life, you know. You still have your access visits come into it, you have visits to the home, you know.
So tell me about that.
So obviously biological parents are entitled to see their children when they're in foster care, so, you know, there needs to be that some sort of, you know, relationship between foster parents and the biological parents as well, because at the end of the day, I'm their daughter, like. So access would have happened for me every Wednesday. So where it would have been at the time where a social worker for Tusla came to my home, which is my foster home, and taking me to, say, we would have called it the balls at the time. So taking me to, like, you know, a play area to meet my biological parents for an hour, get some food, and then that'd be it. So it'd be once a week kind of for an hour. So as you can imagine. Not all the time, but most times, yeah. If it wasn't the 2 of them together, it was at least mum, you know, definitely. But like that, I suppose as I got older, you know, Wednesdays got more busy for me, and I had homework and I had things to do, and you reschedule and you adapt and stuff. But I suppose foster care would have been a bit more stricter when I was in foster care compared to when my sister was in foster care. You know, I think in terms of, like, you know, everyone had to be guard vetted, and, you know, I couldn't go over to a friend's house after school without their parents being guard vetted. But I think there's more of a leniency around that now, in terms of, like, only, Natasha might more insight, is like only, you know, if you're spending an overnight with someone, they have to be guard vetted, you know. Whereas back then when I was in care, it was that if I was to even go to do homework in a friend's house after school, you know, the friend's mum had to be vetted, and I didn't really want to tell people, you know, I wouldn't ask that of someone. I was like, even to my mum, my foster mum, I was like, I couldn't ask her mum to sign that paper. Like, that's not right. And you know, my Garda vetting does look into it's quite a personal form to fill out, so I could never ask that. So I mean, I was more stricter. But yeah, going back to the access then.
I don't mean to cut across you,
No,
but
you're
something
fine.
just popped into my head, and we were having this conversation during the week in the office, and we were talking about when somebody says they're adopted.
Yeah.
People automatically think, "Oh God, are you? What's that like?" Whereas I think if you said to somebody, and I know I worked for 21 years in children's residential services, so I know how they live, and I know that kind of fear that they carry. That when they say they're in care, they're nearly stigmatised.
Yeah.
There's a different element to somebody saying they're in care and they've been adopted, and they are two very different types of, you know, joining another family. But when you say you're in care, it's nearly like a dirty word.
It is.
Yeah, it's nearly like lack of care.
Yeah,
Like, I'm here
yeah.
because I wasn't cared for. Yeah.
And it's like you say I'm adopted. And they go, oh God, what your story? You know, God, is your mum and dad dead? Like, you know what I mean? Oh God, but like, you know, and it's pity. It's like, but when you say you're in care, it's a stigma. There's a more like something behind it with people that they kind of don't want it. They don't want to ask the question why.
Yeah.
Whereas with adopted, I think,
I think that's kind of what pushed me as well, you know, is not to be that statistic or that stigma, or just because, like, I wasn't on heroin, that's their story to tell. You know, I'm telling my story because that's the start to my story, but it's not the end, and it's not, I just didn't want to follow in any of the footsteps, like to the term where I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't, you know, anything of them kind of addictive behaviours. You have to kind of think, you know. So,
do you?
Well, I would have been like, no, like to the extent where I, you know, would have gone on contraception from the age of 16, and when I didn't even have a boyfriend, hadn't met my partner now until I was 18. But like that, I was just the fear. I was like, I just cannot end up like this. I can't, you know. And God, don't get me wrong, in my career I have a lot of empathy for them. I really do. And, you know, it is an illness. I do see addiction as an illness, and some people get out of it, some people don't. And I do, you know, I really feel sorry for them. But then I have to, you know, it's just, I know it wasn't a lifestyle. I seen it, I witnessed it firsthand, and it's not a lifestyle that I would have wanted to choose or go down. So it was more like, I have to be the opposite of this. But in a positive way, because I was motivated to, you know, to keep going on as well. So.
And then I want to ask Mary, like, will you tell him now that he's fostered, and then on to that, will you go on and adopt him? Is that a bad question to ask you? Can I ask that question?
No. Would I tell him that he's foster? Yeah, but he's only 5 now. He's only 5 now. He's too young to comprehend anything. As I said, he already calls the daughter mammy. So as far as he's concerned, you know, I don't see it should make a difference to him. You know, he's still well loved, and he'll be still living there, and life will still go on as normal and stuff for him. But yeah, I would probably feel the need. I'd have to tell him as he gets older, when I feel the time is right for him. Yeah, I will tell him.
And is his biological parents still alive?
Mother is not, father is.
Okay. Yeah. And then will you go on to adopt him?
No, because his daddy's still alive. His daddy, like that, has visiting, you know,
Access.
a lot of he has a lot of access because the child is in the family home, and the son still comes down all the time. So there's a lot of access there.
Right.
You know what I mean? As I always says, he loves him dearly. He just hasn't got the time for him as such. Do you know what I mean?
The hour a week and that.
You know, well,
yeah.
I'd say so, but he is there every day, you know, and stuff. But like that, it's the drug issue, you know, around the access and the stuff, and you know, there's an awful lot to it. But he does have access to visiting rights, just not to take him out and stuff. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, he's there 100 times a day, you know. But he's in now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then again, Nicole, that you were saying there about school. So, like, did you tell your friends about that you're in care?
I don't think I would have told my friends till I got to secondary school. And I was lucky enough to be with the same group all the way up. Like, we went from the primary into the secondary together. And like that, it wasn't a big thing. And I think as well, I'd done a lot of play therapy. So I would have been referred to a play therapist to be told at the age of 7, you know, why I'm in care and what led to me being in care. And they kind of describe it as, you know, mommy and daddy were sick and they couldn't look after you and stuff like that. So I think from the play therapy and from, you know, the training that my, you know, foster parents would have got to help me through explaining that to me as well, just helped me I just would have talked about it freely, like that. I'd nearly shock people. I'd be like, yeah, but that's me man and dad. Yeah, that's them. Because they would always wondered what, like, oh, is that your nanny and granda? I'm like, no, that's my man and dad. Because they were that bit older, you know, they would have been like, they would have been older parents. So by the time I got into secondary school, they were in their 60s, you know.
And you see that training that you talk about there, is that given by Tusla, the play therapy, is that services that's offered?
Generally, if there is a need for it, that they would be kind of sought privately, if the need is there, yeah.
And then as a teenager, did you ever act out, like did you ever say why me, or feel sorry for yourself?
Oh, all the time. All the time. And like that, they would have, like my sisters and my siblings, they'd call me like, you know, you were a cheeky bitch. You were like, you know. But then again, like, I probably was, but then again, I was a normal teenager too. Like, I was just like any other teenager, having a lash out, going through the hormones, you know, that kind of way. But I suppose when you do look at it, you know, in later life, you're like, right, there was stuff there. You were thinking about, you know, why you're here. And even though I knew it was the best possible thing that could ever happen to me being there, but then you think of going, why did I have this start? And, you know, and why does my life have to be so complicated? And then I suppose, you know, when you're allocated a foster and care worker as well, or a link worker that comes to the house to check in, see if everything's fine, and, you know, what do you need, what you don't need. And, you know, if there's a new one on duty, you're constantly, I felt like in my teenage years, because of the, you know, the rollover of different social workers, I would have had to tell my story over and over and over again. So that would have really frustrated me, you know, as a teenager and stuff, because the more I heard it out loud, the more, you know, I kind of started to think like, you know, I just don't want this isn't me, this is what I'm telling you why I'm here, but it's not who I am now and stuff. And so that would have really frustrated me as well, was like that, having to tell the story over and over again. And then I suppose a lot of the lashing out and the acting up my parents, like my foster parents, would have noticed, would have been after access as well. Really? You know, yeah. But I suppose that comes up a lot for foster children, doesn't it? It's after access. It's the coming home. It's the happy pretend hour, and then you go home and you're back to reality. Even though it's your wonderful reality, it's like, why weren't they like that when I was with them? You know, that, like, you know, why couldn't they be this cognitive or in tune when I was there to look after me? And then you start to think, you know, why I am in care, like why they couldn't look after me then, but they look like they could now, and you start asking yourself those questions. But like that they'd fade, like a teenager, they'd fade, and something else would come up and you'd be crying over something else.
And you said that, like, play pretend for that. How long does that go on for? Does that go right up until they're 16 or
adults 18? Well, yeah,
I would have probably stopped it earlier now.
And I think I don't want to say a lot of kids do, but generally I think when they hit them teenage years,
life gets busier.
Yeah.
Like schoolwork got heavier on a Wednesday. I would have been, you know, my foster parents would have encouraged me to do like all after school activities. So I would have had either volleyball or tennis or something after school on a Wednesday, and Wednesday just didn't suit, so I turned it to kind of every second Wednesday. And then eventually it would fade out. And, you know, I suppose in my situation, so if a biological parent starts a detox program and gets clean, they can have what's called unsupervised access. So my biological dad would have got clean first, and he would have been able to just text the foster care and say, can I take Nicole out for the day or an hour? What day suits you? Let me know. And they can kind of correspond back and forth. But unfortunately, Mum didn't have that, so it had to be arranged through Tusla and through the foster and social worker. So like that, the kind of more structured one would have taken a little bit of a backseat, because like that, it was only stuck to one day and a certain hour, whereas Dad can kind of not freely come and go, because I wouldn't have seen him that often, but would have had more control to kind of just grab her for an hour, throw in the car, and we go out. Yeah.
And did you want to go out with
Yeah, I would have always. I was a typical daddy's girl, craved the love, wanted the attention. You know, I think most of my frustrations would have come from him. You know, because Mum, it's funny when you think of it, but Mum I would have always think of as a friend. Like, you know, she was. You could talk to her as a friend, but I knew that I was never going to get that like motherly kind of instinct off her during that time. It was more of a friend, and we could have a laugh together, and you know, she'd ask you about boys, or she'd ask you about like how school was, or you know, are you getting your nails done or your hair done? Whereas I think Dad would have been a big one for me. He would have really craved his love and attention, and you know, and am I doing well in this? And oh, I got this in a test, and you know, really wanted to impress there. But unfortunately, as an adult, we don't have that contact anymore, and I suppose I just wasn't good enough. Well, that's how I see it anyway. But look, I suppose there's other issues there. Yeah.
Don't say that. That's terrible. That's terrible. Don't. No, don't.
You want me yourself?
Don't. No, don't. You know, don't say that. Don't ever say that about yourself. Honestly, Nicole. Don't, because you're fabulous sitting here in front of me. I'm listening to you articulate. Your English language is so much better than mine. Honestly, don't ever.
Sorry, it was always they're not knowing why.
Don't.
You know, and it always would have got to me, you know, I just would have felt like I was constantly, for myself as well, you know, just to be this successful person. And you think, you know, when your child has, you know, achieved so much, that to be some sense of like, you know, oh God, I'm proud. Like, you know, I'm glad she was taken away from me and stuff. But I don't think I'll ever get that kind of closure. But I just think I'm an adult now and I need to focus on myself. But I haven't spoken about them in years, you know, and even my foster family would tread lightly, you know, speaking about them in the house and stuff. But, geez, I haven't even cried over them in years either. So it's just, you know, when you're speaking and I'll just come out because like that, I had to stop myself even thinking about them, you know, because I'd ask myself why so many times, but I was like, Nicole, you're just not going to get an answer. And, you know, I have one really good friend, and I talk to her all the time, and she was like, you know, maybe Nicole, I don't mean to pry, she said, but maybe, you know, seeing you and where you are just reminds him of a time in his life that was dark. And I never thought about it like that. But then again, I had to think to myself, I was like, but that's not my fault, you know, just because I would remind someone, you know, and I still don't know, like that, it's still speculation and stuff, but yeah, no, he has his life now, and I suppose there's still a little lack of forgiveness there, but I do wish him all the best, so I really do.
Yeah, but you know what? You're entitled to that. You know what I mean? And the thing is, I think a lot of things in life, I think we say, you know, if someone's done well, and if, like your sibling, even now, and say someone's done well and the sibling's not done as well, that's not your fault.
Yeah.
And yeah, you do carry that. You carry that. You know what? Like, you know, what have I done wrong on them? Yeah. What did I do to deserve that? There's sometimes,
I think it's more if, like, say for example, if your daughter came in with a picture from school, and she's like, "Mom, look at this," or "I got student of the week," and you just blow it up. And I suppose I would get that a lot from my foster parents. Anything I did, if it was like I coloured inside the lines, it was a big celebration in the house, and it was everything, like, you know, and it was showing the neighbours. It was up on the fridge for 2 weeks, you know, it was everything. Whereas I think when you have, I suppose because I didn't have that relationship really there, like that would have been like the hour a week, you know, I think it was just more, I was expecting that nearly of him, because that's what I'd known parents to be, and the reaction to be, you know, and I think it's just I was growing up in that loving home. And but like that, growing up and going through college myself, and, you know, studying social care and looking into psychology, you know, I do, you know, I'm a big believer that when people go through their detox and go into rehab, that they're taken back to a time when they first started using, and it's like they start their life from there. And I have a big understanding of it, and you know, I've really looked into heroin and the effects it has on the brain, and like how, you know, when you do detox from a drug, how you can kind of actually lose cells of the brain due to them being destroyed from it. So I have a lot of empathy there, and I really do. But I think, you know, having no contact with your child is still like flabbergasting me. I could never see, like, you know, I couldn't see why someone wouldn't want to know how their child even is. But I suppose that's a different story for another day.
And your mum and dad, your biological parents, are they together?
No, they're not together. No, they're separated. Yeah.
And your mum, do you still have contact with your mum?
I do, yeah, all the time. Yeah, she never stops. I know I love her. I do. I love her to death. She is, and I've really a lot of sympathy for her, and I feel for her, and I know what she's been through, and you know, I can really understand the choices she made and why she made them because of what she had been through in life. You know, her life was tough, and I can really understand that as an adult. Like, you know, I don't know how, like, her strength, I think I get a bit of some of her strength from her, like, you know, being so resilient and stuff. I think I just get that from her. Like that, obviously there was times where I resented her for, you know, putting me in that position, but at the end of the day, I think just more as I've grown, I've just more grown to like know her as the woman she is today, you know, and build that kind of relationship back up.
Have you ever asked her about your dad?
Yeah, and like that as well, it's a bit difficult that way because she would see him as the ex-boyfriend, and like that, go back to the boundaries then again of, you know, having, you know, mum as more of a friend, as a mum, you know, she nearly crossed the boundaries there and be like, you know, this fecker or whatever, this and that. So I take it with a pinch of salt, you know, that kind of way, but she knows.
You would never want to give out to her and say, stop.
No, I know, and that's why people actually laugh at me. They're like, how do you even listen to her? Because I just sit back and listen to her, but no, I do. I've a lot of love for her, I do, you know, and she's had a tough life, and she's making a little life for herself now, and I'm very proud of her and the woman she is, definitely.
It's just taking back what you were saying about, you know, the different types of foster carers that there is. Foster carers, is that what I'm saying?
Foster care.
Care that there is. And when I did Patrick James's podcast with him,
It was actually after Patrick, when I listened to Patrick's podcast, that I sent the email to Paul.
Yeah, because it broke my heart, because it was, and I knew what was coming. I knew, like he said, that he had, his brother was fostered as a baby, and his mum made a decision not to take the baby out of the home that he was in. And I knew that was coming, because like as a mother's love, I just felt, but I knew that was the right choice for that child at the time. So it's just, Natasha, I just think, you know, people who go through the system, and then people who get themselves clean, or they, you know, whether it's always, is it always drugs, or is there?
No, there's different reasons. Again, I don't think I'd be too qualified now to kind of fill them in, but like there's varying different reasons why young people come into care. Generally, like drugs would play a big part of it, and I think we're of an age, nearly of a certain age, I suppose, that there is unfortunately a lot of grandparents looking after, doing relative foster care, because of the drug epidemic that we did have. But that's not to say that, you know, there's still kids out there that their parents are not using, or, you know, don't have a drug addiction, but that they just need that little bit of extra support. And I think that's where I'm only doing this since June, so like the importance, I suppose, what I've taken from it is about the different types of foster care and how people within, what struck me as well is like, tusla at the minute, we're really aiming, and what we're trying to do is keep children within their communities. So that's why we're kind of, you know, respite foster care and day foster care and short-term foster care, and that if you think there's a family out there that you think, you know, you're kind of looking at and you're seeing them on a daily basis, and you think you might be able to help that family because the mommy might be struggling, you know, she might have a little bit some small mental health issues, or
she might have a large family.
She might have a large family, unable to cope. Yeah, you know, so it's for varying different reasons. And I suppose that's really why we're doing what we're doing now, is to, you know, we're looking for foster carers in Dublin. We're trying to keep kids within their own community, so they don't have to leave their schools, they don't have to leave their football clubs, or their after school clubs, or their football clubs, or whatever it may be, you know, that there might be somebody within your own area that you may, and that's not to say that you don't pick up the phone to kind of, you know, if fostering is something that you're interested in, you know, I'll give out details later on, but like if fostering was something that you were ever interested in, I would just urge people to pick up the phone. If you think you can give a child, you know, half of what Nicole has received from her parents, like, you just have to look at her, you know, she's amazing, and the, you know, our brand, tusla brand at the minute, like fostering is I am raising amazing, And it's about just putting it out there how amazing these kids and how resilient these kids are.
How many kids are in the foster system, do we know?
Oh, Nicole has
Nicole,
that.
Nicole,
there,
you tell me
yeah.
there, okay.
So it's 5,825 kids in care in Ireland. That's since the end of August this year.
Yeah.
What? Oh my God, that's huge, isn't
I
it?
actually have the
amount of foster
the amount that are in the different types of care as well, because like that it was shocking to me too.
That's huge.
It's a big number.
Oh, look at me all over the place.
And Mary, like we're saying there about the respite, so if say, like if Mary was struggling and there's respite foster care then as well, is there?
So there could be like respite foster carers that would provide respite for foster carers.
Right, okay.
If that makes sense, you know. But there's also then respite foster care where you may have a family that might need that small short space of time just to kind of gather their thoughts or, you know, get themselves ready again, be it for a weekend, be it for 4 days, be it for however long it is.
Go on with him.
Yeah, so I have heard that there's 5,000, as we said, 5,825 children in care since the end of August 21. 65% of those kids are in general foster care, so they're within the system. 25% are in relative foster care, so with the likes of Mary's situation, and 8% are in residential care then, so they're residential care homes, where Natasha would have most of her experience in as well. And then 2% are in other care placements, which the other care placements are quite rare, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about residential care? Like, so is there like residential places in Ireland? Like, Natasha, I swear to God, I wouldn't even know that there is.
Most
And
of
a
them are
lot,
quite hidden, aren't
yeah,
they?
a lot of residentials would be just in your neighbourhood,
And you wouldn't even realise.
and you wouldn't realise that they're there. You know, what can I say? Again, the kids that come through residential are absolutely amazing. These kids that come through the care system are just, they really are, like, the Raising Amazing is just, it's a great catchphrase because these kids are just so resilient.
They've been through. I mean, obviously not as babies. As babies, they just know, and they'll only know you, Mary, and your daughter. That's all he'll know, and obviously the big family around him. But I'd imagine from a 7-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, you know what I mean? That, you know, because imagine now taking him out of your home.
Yeah.
And putting them into, like, if anything had happened, and for, obviously not a 5, because we really aim that nobody under 12 goes into residential, you know, and that's something that we've kind of tried to stand over. If it is a case that a young person has to go to residential care under 12, does it, like, it goes up the chain, you know, there's so many people that have to sign off on it. But it's, like, the importance, I suppose, of foster care is that they go to a family. That family might be one single parent. It might be 2 dads. It might be 2 mummies. It can be whatever way, any race, religion.
Doesn't
you know,
have to be the standard nuclear kind of family.
It's a nuclear kind of family, exactly. Whereas when you go to residential, you might have 4 people on every day. So every day you will have 4 different staff members. And I think kids in residential struggle from that point of view, as in every day somebody different will collect them from school. Every day somebody different will bring them to school. You know, so it's
really important to get them into a loving home with, like, nanny, granddad, mommy, daddy, like, you know.
Yeah, whoever. And it is really, like, you know, the older the child gets, the harder it is to get placements for them.
Yeah. Because I think personally, Natasha, I think I would be, like, if I was to look at it, I would be like, and I know it's terrible that you don't want to be like saying, but this is what people think, that they go, God, I'd rather, like, you know, that's even terrible to say, but I'd rather, you know, foster a baby or a smaller child rather than take a 12-year-old, you know, into my home where my other children are. I think is there a little bit of fear with that, I think? Or
possibly, and then as Nicole was explaining, there's access visits and there's all those pieces that come along with fostering.
Yeah.
But that there is, like, we are doing our own, it's Dublin South Central recruitment campaign, and we start that next week. And anybody that is interested in fostering can register their interest on eventbrite.ie. And a lot of what you're asking is all about myth busting, and it explains a lot about that. Nicole is very kindly going to help us out with that as well, as amazing as she is. And that's, I would urge people, if anybody ever, even if the thought crossed their mind to join on eventbrite.ie, get more information. You will, like, I'm a social care leader on a fostering team of social workers.
Right.
So they are much more experienced to give the information that people need to hear. I suppose I'm here. I thought I was coming here as a support to Mary and Nicole, and I've been landed.
I've been not putting you in the deep, like making you answer the questions on that.
But you know, and I don't mind as much as I can. But I would just urge people, if anybody out there ever thought of, could I do this? Is it for me? Just to register on eventbrite.ie, to look, to see, to join the information session and hear exactly as you said, just a little bit more about what fostering entails.
And the myths with it, because again, my friend, she did a podcast with me at the very start, and she her mum fostered her, like, I think it was it 2 or 3 children, and they were her niece's children. And then, unfortunately, her mum passed away about, God, Mary could be probably dead about 5 years, maybe. That's terrible. If Natalie's listening to this, she'll kill me. But then Natalie, because she died, they had to do the will to make that Cole and the other fella would stay
in the family.
In the family,
yeah.
Because they wanted them to stay in the family. And now, like, she like, Natalie's the same. She's like my sister Nicole. My sister Cole. She doesn't say that, like, that's our sister and our brother. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how important for you, Nicole, was it that your sister and brothers accepted you?
Well, that wasn't very hard for me at all. They accepted me straight away, and like that, it would have been my baby sister. I suppose when you get older, and now my foster mom now has 16 grandchildren.
Oh my God!
So yeah, everyone has 2 kids except for my brother and my sister just had their 3rd each. So so there's 16. We've even amount of girls and boys now as well. So I suppose it gets more harder because, like that, my sister's daughter, so my niece, would be like my best friend, and we're very close in age. So like that, people would be like, how does that work? And you know, and I'm like, and then I go, oh yeah, well, like, she's not my niece, but like, you know, and I start to kind of explain them. But I just, the way I speak about it, it's nearly like I'm expecting people to just go along with it and be like, because it's so real to me and it's my reality. You know, and even like my nieces and nephews is what I call them. Like, you know, they would never see me like I'm Auntie Cody, and that's it. Like, you know, they don't see me as anything different, or, you know, you get the odd, you know, curiosity of a child, and like, why do you call Nanny Mammy and stuff, like, you know, and not Nanny the way we do, as if I'm like one of the nieces and nephews and stuff like that. But no, it was never hard. We argued like sisters, we fighted like sisters and brothers, you know. But there was always a lot of love there. They accepted me.
Do you count your lucky stars?
Every single day. Like, the 2 of them are like, yeah, they're like my pride and joy. They really are. Like, I don't think I would be half the woman I am today without the 2 of them. Like, you know, they would have just really encouraged me to be, you know, to be me and the best version of me. Like, I always say, like, you know, the heroin, the addiction, that's their story. It's not mine. You know, so like that, I got to my Leaving Cert, because like that as well, you know, some of my sisters and brothers didn't go to college, and it's not like education was forced. It was more that you're your own person and you can make your own path in life, and that was really enforced in me. And it was really like, we're here for support for you. And I'm a big believer of a child, especially in foster care, having that one, I was lucky enough to have lots, but have that one good adult in their life to be that voice of reason, to be that encouragement, to be like, just because you come from there doesn't mean you can't do that, you know. So like that, as I got older, I did my Leaving Cert, and I was like, no, social care, I need to know a little bit more about addiction. I want to know a bit more. I want to help kids who are in my position. I want to be there. I want to be that one good adult, and that was my like driving force. And like that, they were 112% behind me, like, you know, every step of the way. So I did a 2-year PLC in social care, and then I went on and I did my 4-year level A Bachelor of Arts degree then as well after, and then I've been working as a social care worker ever since.
Wow.
So, and I love it. I love the understanding I got from it, and then I also love my role then as well, you know, and even doing my placements as well, getting to be in different. You would do 4 placements in college. I was lucky enough to get 6 because I did the PLC as well. But like that as well, I was saying I was lucky enough to get those placements and, you know, have an impact on different people's lives and different services. But like that as well, having that PLC option, there was less pressure on me get into education, because I think as well, that's another statistic I didn't want to be. It was that not a lot of kids in foster care go on to further education. And, you know, just because I didn't get a lot of points in my Leaving Cert, I might have been very intellectual. You know, the PLCs are interview based. You know, you just need to pass your basics, English, maths and Irish. You get in based on your personality and why you want to do a course. And I suppose it gets easier after school because it's something you want to do and something you're passionate in. So like that, I would have then, you know, really been that kind of one good out then for my biological sister and really encouraged her. And she actually just started, she finished school, and left school, and she's in aftercare at the moment, and she just started a PLC as well in SNA, and she's loving it and she's thriving, and I'm delighted for her because, you know, I just think it's just so important to have something after Leaving Cert. And I kept saying to her as well, like, you know, we're not a statistic, you know, you can be who you want to be. Like, foster care doesn't define you. Like, you know, we were in care. And I suppose I would have always said at the time, before tusla became, you know, I would have been in care of the HSE, you know, and I would have, and even saying that, it's like you are, you know, you're owned by someone else and not your own person. So I would have always, you know, said that to her and encouraged her, like, you know, just because she'd be from a bit of a tougher area, and I'd be like, just because you're from that area and just because no one around you got further than Leaving Cert doesn't mean you can't. Like, don't fall into that, you know, I'm a product of my environment, because you're not. You know, so I'm very proud of her as well. Yeah, she's doing great.
And do you and her ever have like really heart-to-heart conversations about?
We've actually only had one recently. So she turned 18, and my foster dad, he's amazing, he is, and he was just like, Nicole, you know, she's probably getting bits and pieces of stories. Her situation was completely different to me, and I thank my lucky stars that I had to go through what I went through, that she didn't have to, because she got taken out of one home and put straight into another. And because it was like that, it was relative, you know, that it was with dad's mum, so dad could go in and out. They have a great relationship, the two of them, and I would never, you know, to her it's we talk all the time, and it's that lie, because I have to keep that up for her, because I would never diminish that relationship that she has, and I would never, you know, crush that figure she has in her head of, you know, and how much she loves him. I'd never take that away from her. So, you know, she had him in her life all the time. He came and he went, and so like that, she never knew any different. She would, I'd say, be very grateful, like Mary's grandson, to be just seen as the grandchild, you know, that kind of way in the situation. There was no, like, you know, she called my nanny, you know, she had her uncles and everything around her, so there was no, whereas when I went on access with mum, and if my foster mum came with me, I would, you know, refer to her as her name, not say her name, because I'd be so afraid of hurting mum by calling someone else mum, you know, that kind of way. Whereas, you know, her situation was her situation. So it was only then when a few questions.
Is that important that, like, God, as a child, Jesus Christ, like, you know, to be saying, oh, I don't want to horn, and, you know, it's, and you're the one that's hurting. Like, you're the one that's hurting.
To manage everybody's feelings.
Yeah.
I think I would have always put their needs before mine. I wouldn't even thought of me. I was just like, always concentrated, like, well, don't call her mum. Like, just call her like her name. Like, don't say it. And I would have been very conscious of that and stuff like that. And because like that, you know, she did. As much as I'm a big believer of, you don't get your mother or father title from just giving birth, or just, you know, being there, like, you know, she was my mum, and I couldn't take that, like, I was taken away from her. I couldn't take that privilege away from her. So I would have always, and still to the day, sometimes I'll always say, I won't say me mum, like, I'll still kind of stutter and be like, oh, and she won't, not that she would have corrected me, she would have just been like, well, don't forget I'm your ma too, like, you know, and like that, having the two mammies kind of thing, like Mary was saying. But no, I would have been very conscious not to hurt the feelings, like, you know, or to mention, they would have been always just, you know, Betty and Paddy. It wouldn't have been mum and dad. Well, when I was home now, it was mum and dad, like, you know.
And just what you said there about your sister, like, I do this all the time. I literally fall in love with my guests, like, you know what I mean? But like, that you didn't want to damage her relationship with her father. Never.
Like, still to today, she just thinks, I'm like, oh, I only texted him yesterday. She's like, oh, right. And as much as it's terrible, because I don't like to lie, I just like that I wouldn't, like, in other circumstances, say, burst her bubble, you know, to say that there was ever, you know, that I had a different version of that person in my head. Like, you know, I'd just go along with hers because, you know, that's what she grew up with. And I suppose as well, she would have been with my nanny, and my nanny would have been a single carer at the time as well. So she hadn't, that was her father figure. I was blessed enough to have a dad at home, like, you know. And he was absolutely amazing. Like, even when I had kind of questions growing up and stuff like that, you know, he'd always let me figure out on my own if any questions come to him, or he'd give me a little bit of advice, and you go back to him and be like, that's what you meant by that. Like, you know, he was very clever, you know, and he still is. I adore the two of them. But I'm like that, she only kind of started having questions when she turned 18 and aftercare and stuff like that. And I had a feeling, to be honest with you. What's aftercare? So when a child turns 18, between the ages of 18 and 21, is that right? They get what's called aftercare. So it's like you are coming out of foster care, and it's just that little bit of support to kind of get you out of your teenage years. Some children will choose to leave the foster home at that age, and be, would that be right by saying, housed by tusla, or some kind of sense. You wouldn't be made homeless anyway. You'd have a plan with tusla, but I suppose
from the age of 16 aftercare, an aftercare worker is introduced, and you generally develop an aftercare plan as to what will happen as you approach your 18th birthday. My experience is that only since June, any kind of family that I've been in contact with,
most kids don't leave. Yeah, I never left.
Do you know?
I'm still there to today.
And it's a stupid question to say, like it again, because like I just don't know. I don't know. Like,
no, the information isn't there.
Yeah, like, do you go on to get adopted?
So, personally, for me, they would have loved to adopt me. They would have absolutely loved me. But I think from our personal situation and from what happened was that because one of two parents, not for everyone, wasn't in cognitive mind to sign a contract, I could not be adopted. And at that stage, that was only kind of looked at when I was 16, and then sure I was approaching 18 and it was too late. So,
is it important to you?
Yeah, like it would. It would have been at the time, really. But like that, they'd say to me, "You're my child. You'll always be my child." And my sister, like, "You're always going to be my sisters and stuff." But no, it would have been quite important to me. But I know that like a piece of paper is not going to matter. You know, I'm part of the family. Like, you know,
I can imagine as a teenager that they probably would be like, "Well, why don't you just adopt me?" Do you know what I mean? Why? But as you said, if someone's not in the right frame of mind.
I think there's certain things that, like, elements of signing a contract, isn't it? And kind of giving away them parental privileges as well. So,
and that's what happens, I think. No, don't
quote us on it.
But it's very, very different, I think, when you adopt somebody. And the process, I think, is not slightly different, but it is different. But when you adopt somebody, you come in, like, you have responsibility for that child. You sign off, I suppose, if they need medical assistance or anything like that. Whereas when you foster, there is a social worker, so you'll have two elements of social work involved. You'll have the child and care social worker, who generally deals with the child and all the child's needs, and you also have a foster and link worker, and they're the one that that's the team I'm on, and they're the one that kind of links it with the foster carers, and kind of help and do that supporting role, so that you give the foster carers the space to talk about their placement. I don't like using the word placement, but what's going on for them, if there's issues arise, and if they think that a bit of therapy might help the young person or the child that they have, or so there's two very different elements to fostering and adoption. Again, as I said, I'm not gonna talk about something I don't really know about, but
like what you said there, I remember having an operation as a child.
I was about to ask that,
and that we needed a signature from a biological parent, because even though they were my guardians, for something serious like that, you need a signature from a parent.
Because that's what I was about to ask, like with Mary, like if God forbid your grandson broke his leg or anything, that would you have to inform? Is it tusla?
Yeah.
Would you have to inform them?
I would have had to start, but once they turn 5, I think you can do it yourself.
Yeah.
But if it's under 5, tusla has to be informed, as well as the parents and stuff. But like that, if the parents is not available, tusla has to be. But I think after so many years of fostering, when you have the child in your care, you can, you don't have to keep notifying, if you have broken leg or arm, or, there's no need to keep notifying. But I think it's 5 years you have to be in your care.
I don't know that.
And what kind, do you feel like, as a foster carer that because this is the thing, again, when people can ask the questions and again, we'll give the details throughout this podcast. Do you feel as a parent, as a foster parent, that you get that support from tusla?
Oh yeah, definitely. They're always there. The link worker, the whole lot, they're always there at the other end of the phone. So if I have any queries, anything at all, I just give them a bell. And I thank God now, I don't need him as much. We're fine. You know, we're plodding along just nicely, kind of. But that's not to say, because he's only 5 now, that's not to say I'd not need no help in 10 years' time, you know, when he becomes a teenager. And
there's training involved. So as social care leaders, myself and my colleague more so than me, she would kind of collate a plan of what's coming up for foster carers and what different types of training they might need. And so there's lots, and she collates like a training calendar and would send a text out to all our foster carers, and we'll give them lists of dates of trainings, and they can log on. Or prior to COVID, it was, you know, you could
face to face.
I'm actually laughing here because a few of them I would have attended and got a certificate for as well. Because I'd be like, I'm going to that free training when I was after 18.
And you know, so all that training is there. So and it's like social, you know, training on if you have teenagers and how you handle social media, or you know, if you have young babies, like there's the Solihull training. It's all about brain development and how the one good adult. This at the minute is huge. This is, you know, throughout all care, I think, or aspects of care, this one good adult. That statistics show if a child has one good adult in their life, it just stands to them. And they will always remember this one good adult. So a lot of training focuses around that as well. But there's training on it, like, I'm trying to think of like...
I think even regardless of training, like I know as I said before, my foster parents were like that bit older. So like if we had problems, say like for example when I was filling out, you know, the Susie grant form to get a grant to go into my PLC, you know, that the link worker would have come out, helped us fill that in, you know, because they wouldn't have had a clue how to use a laptop and stuff, and some of my sisters were working and weren't available and stuff. So like that, when the query arose, I felt like we got the help we would have needed. You know, there wouldn't necessarily been training around how to apply for college with your foster child, but like that when it come up, like that you had the phone number of a link worker just to call and to arrange that to kind of to happen. Well, I felt for my foster parents as well, they would have been offered a lot of support.
And as you said there as well about the vulnerable children, like now, like we've got 5,500, maybe 6,000 children in care. But could you imagine the amount of vulnerable children that are still out there that are not in care yet?
Yeah, and especially with COVID, I think that haunts me a little bit.
Does it?
You know, yeah, especially when the isolation happens and stuff like that. And you know, you're just, well, me thinking personally of being a child in care, having to be, you know, locked in home and not being able to kind of get outside and having that fear and that anxiety around. I think that's why a lot of children going back to school as well have that anxiety of going back to school and getting back into routine, because they've known no different than being, you know, in lockdown with the same people. But then you just don't know what's going on behind closed doors in homes for some of these children. And like that, it could be something, it could be nothing either. Like it could be just that, you know, that there was a lot of kids and there's a few kids that didn't, you know, get the attention or the care that they needed, or by the time the mom got to them, there was nothing left, you know, that kind of way. But your mind does wander. You're thinking, you know, how did these children in certain circumstances like mine get through a lockdown, you know, with COVID? Yeah, it does. Because I'm just thinking how I would have coped as a 7-year-old, been locked down in a house like that. And I suppose the boredom kicks in, and not for me, for the parents. You know, the boredom kicks in, and what kind of happens in the home, you don't like to really think about it, don't you know? But yeah, it's a lot of kids. It's more than I thought. That's why I wrote it down here and brought it with me today, because I just couldn't believe it. Like, you know, because I would sit on the foster care committee for South Dublin Central as well. It's like my little side job. So but like that, we would see, you know, a lot of our foster parents aging out now as well, which is scary. And I think that's why there's a lot of, you know, there is a big need for the foster carers out there, because the good ones are, you know, have done their time, have seen their day, and they, you know, have got to the end. Like, I mean, my foster parents now, I would have stayed, I was in long-term care with them, so they had me all the way through. When I got to 18, I was still in care, even though I chose to remain at home because I was in full-time education. So I roughly only came out of care with them, well, care as you call it, in, you know, 2020, realistically, when I left college. So like that all the way up. So you just wonder who's, you know, what kids are lucky enough to get.
More people like that. Do you think you can articulate it so well because then you went on to do social care? Like, do you know?
Yeah, definitely. I just think that it really helped with my own, like, to understand my own situation better. You know, when you like that, when you do psychology or you do, you know, the many elements like that, addiction studies and stuff. I think it really helped me, you know, learn more about. I suppose a lot of the whys were answered as well, and then I suppose I always had that drive to, you know, to be that one good adult or to help out a child. So I just, now don't get me wrong, it's not always what I knew I wanted to do. That's why I did the PLCs first. The PLCs are great for, you know, they kind of do a wide spectrum of different things. And, but like, because like that, when I did level 5, I was like to my mum, my foster mum, I was like to her, Mum, I don't know if this is for me. And I was like, why don't you do the 6 and see? So I was like, yeah, I'll do the 6 and see. And all my friends from 5 went straight into the degree, you know. But like that, I always wanted to make sure it was for me. But then I kind of just fell in love with it as I went along. You know, there's so many different areas in social care as well that you can get into.
Is that an engagement ring on your finger?
It is.
Tell me about that.
So that was the big shock. That was I was with my fiance Mark. We were 21 when we got engaged. We had a joint 21st birthday party, and it was Easter when he proposed, and yeah, a big shock. And I thought, you know, like that, I was thinking, God, I'm only have to get over the stigma of being in foster care now. I'm going to be the stigma of engaged at 21. But yeah, no, I think for me it was quite lovely. You know, it's the sense of belonging. You know, the commitment on the finger. Now, don't get me wrong, I have a good head on my shoulders. I want my mortgage first. I'm not wasting my money on a wedding, but no, he's very good to me. He's very loving, and I suppose I nearly had to draw out a map of my family when we first got together, like, this is who's this, because it was like 3 sides of the family, you know, and this is who this is and stuff. But he fitted in very well, and, you know, everyone loves him, and he has a bit of a head cold at home, and Mum is constantly on the phone to him. Mum is in my foster mum, you know, going, did you go to the doctor yet? And you looking after yourself and all, and, you know, he gets more of the attention than I do now. But
can I ask you, Nicole, do you feel you deserve it? Like, do you struggle with deserving that love?
No. Because I got it, you know. It was more the reflecting back, when, like, you know, every child should get that love. You know, you know, it wasn't. I know some kids that come into foster care, you know, would struggle with the boundaries and the hugging, or, you know, or even when you get I suppose a child that's not a relative and you're in foster care, you don't know. You're thinking of your boundaries yourself, like, can I hug this child, or can I hold this child's hand? And, you know, but it is all about the love. And I know there is a certain amount of, you know, child protection there and stuff like that, but all a child needs is a hug, and to be told that they're doing a good job. And, you know, and for me it was more the routine. It was having someone tuck me into bed, wake me up in the morning, bring me to school, having a packed lunch, bring me home. Now, don't get me wrong, you know, my foster parents didn't get past primary school, so they wouldn't be able to help me with the homework or anything like that. But like that was just that dinner was on the table. It was, you know, it was the routine. I think a lot of kids in foster care miss that routine. But yeah, the love was always there. So I would have always feel, not that I deserved it, but, you know, that, like, you know, that I was very grateful for, you know.
Can I ask you, and I'm going to ask you, and I won't ask you, Natasha, just because you've experienced it. I did get a couple of DMs, a couple of messages from people saying to me, oh my God, sorry. Oh, Paul kill me for that. But I did get a couple of DMs saying to me, have you ever done one on fostering? Would you do one on fostering? Would you, you know, because they didn't have a good experience and they wanted to come on and talk about that. And so I know they'll be listening, because I did go back and I said, I'm actually going to do one about fostering. So does it always not turn out the success that you've? Absolutely.
I honestly, hand on heart, can say I would consider myself a bit rare, like, in terms of, you know, the positivities. There's kids, you know, out there that haven't got that stability, that will, you know, unfortunately not get on in one foster home, be moved to the next one, and be living out of one bag, and you hear the horror stories and stuff. But I suppose then you wonder how many people with my story that I suppose has started off negative but is completely positive, I promise. You know, how many of them actually out there getting the opportunity like me today to tell their positive stories. And because there's children like me who get so comfortable in their foster home and don't know any different, and this is my home, you know, that they're the stories you don't hear. And I suppose that's why, like I said to Natasha, absolutely I want to come on today, because like that I might have a few negatives in my story and a few bumps along the road, but, you know, without having, like, my 2 foster carers, I wouldn't be where I am today, and my story could have been completely different. And I suppose it's all about that. It's getting, you know, people who care and want to give you that care. So I absolutely empathise with a lot of them people out there who don't have a positive story. And I do like consider myself very lucky to be able to sit here and tell a positive story and not have much, have experienced much trauma,
And you think also, like, whether they've been through trauma or not, well, they obviously have to be in the situation that they're in, but also it's down to yourself as well. That
100%. Like that, I did have people motivating me, but at the end of the day, it was my decision to make, whether I wanted to kind of go on. But then it's like, that's how they raised me, as well as how I was raised. I was raised to, to make good decisions and to be the person I wanted to be, and to not be that statistic, or not to be worried about that stigma, and, and to get as far as I want to get with my career. So I suppose it's like, even though it was me as well, it's also, like that the people around you, that can encourage you to be like, just because you were in care doesn't mean you can't do this. Like, they threw me a big, huge 18th birthday party, and it wasn't even turning 18. It was the fact that I was out of care. But I wasn't. I knew I wasn't. But at that age, I was like, you don't have to kind of carry the story around, even though it'll always be my story. But like that, they wanted to celebrate that you've done 18 years, well, not 18 full years, but like, I've got to 18, and the majority of that was in care. So like, that was even turned into a success for me, and that was celebrated for me. It wasn't going, oh, you're 18 today and you're out of care, and what's the plan? It was never like Nicole was going to leave. It was like, we're celebrating this, and we like a new chapter for you, like, that kind of way. So it's definitely the people you have around you
as well. And you said there, and again, I want to bring Mary in a little bit, just the final few words, because we'll finish up and we'll go through the bits and pieces, that the good foster parents, like all foster parents are good, but like the ones that are aging out, and that's a huge concern, is it?
Yeah, definitely.
And hence the drive next week.
The campaign. There is National Recruitment Week will happen, I reckon, towards the end of January, and that's, as I said, nationally. So it's a countrywide thing. Generally, I think National Foster Care Week takes place around October, but we've decided this year we're going to move it forward.
Yeah, and I think COVID messed up a lot of stuff for us. So yeah.
So we've decided that we were going to plough ahead with ours, particularly in Dublin South Central. Just, again, exactly as you said, a lot of foster carers are aging out. There's not an interest, I suppose, in... Not that there's not an interest. People aren't picking up the phone. People aren't kind of, even if you think about it, or, if it's something that crossed your mind, they're not picking up the phone, or they're not kind of saying, okay, give me a little bit more information. So that's, I suppose, why we've decided. We were hoping to hold two face-to-face on information sessions, but unfortunately, given the numbers that have kind of shot up over the last couple of weeks, we've had to pull it back and put them both online.
But you think, Natasha, that people don't know, unless like it lands on your door like it did for Mary, that people are going, oh, I'd like, and I know this now is helping, but before this and before the campaigns, do you not think that, like, because if I seen an ad in the telly, like, I'd go, oh God, yeah, maybe I do that, but I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Yeah, and I suppose that's what we're doing, that's what we're putting out there. We've newspaper ads and radio ads going out next week, and it's just informing people of these online information sessions that we're doing, and a lot of it is myth busting. It's that you don't have to be married, it doesn't have to be a man and a woman, it can be two men or two women, or you can be on your own. You don't have to have a big mansion. We're looking to keep kids within their communities, so it is within local communities, and we're just urging people to register. Come on, if it's something that you think, and you might by the end of the information think, no, it's not for me, or you might think, actually, this is something that I can do, it's something that, and then the social worker will be involved then, and they'll be able to give you more information about the process, and it is a lengthy process, but like that, I just urge people to pick up the phone. And
I think a lot of people have the same questions as well, and they think like, oh, I don't know, like yourself, you're saying there, like, oh, I wouldn't know that, but then there's a lot of people out there probably thinking the exact same thing, and you don't know until you get your questions answered. Because like that, my sisters and all that wouldn't have thought about fostering, because like that, they weren't aware that now, because they're urging for so many foster carers, that you can do it on your own, and you can do it there's so many different ways that you can you know, become a foster carer. And I think that's where the kind of just the lack of information is for people as well.
I also think with foster kids, I don't know about me, but I think they're older people. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, no, do you know what I mean? Sorry, Mary, but you know what I mean? Like, I'd always think, you know, but she does that because she's older. Like, I would never have thought that me as a 40-odd-year-old woman would be able to do it. Do you know what I mean? Or, you know, people out there who possibly can't have families and all that, they could change so many children's lives by being foster care parents.
Yeah.
And I don't think that registers with people that they could be changing kids' lives.
And that's why, like we're saying, can you help a child? Can you raise them amazing?
And then some people do think, oh, like, you know, if I did, like, say, the respite, I'm only getting a child for, you know, a few days and stuff like that. But I promise you, that could be a tough week for that child, and then a few days is just a little bit of, like, you know, out of reality. A little bit of a holiday for them, a little bit of a taste of what they could have. And it's, you know, as much as you don't like to, you know, give the child back or send the child back, that could just be what that child needs.
What the family
and that little space,
needs.
and what the family needs too,
That's heartbreaking. That's, I literally, that's at the catch of me. Do you know what I mean? That, why are we so selfish with our thoughts? That I know we're like, oh my God, you know, you have a child which for 5 days, or have a child which for 10 days, and you have to send them back. But actually,
you've done that child like probably the biggest favour. Yeah.
Or the parents even, because that's, you know, if it's a parent that's struggling, even, you know, getting even the likes of day, you know, community foster carers. That, for me, being somebody new to foster care, that's what stuck out to me. Do you know, that I think there's so many families in so many areas that could be helped, and the children could nearly avoid coming into care on a permanent basis if those little pieces were in place to support families. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That stuck out for me. Like, I would have been like, I'm working for Tusla, and before that HSE in the southwestern area, but I've been doing this. I've been working in care for nearly 22 years, and I never knew this side of fostering. Do you know, I knew of foster because you know, there would have been young people that would have kind of had foster placement breakdowns and stuff like that, but I didn't know the ins and outs of fostering. I didn't know you could do day fostering or short-term fostering or respite or long-term fostering. I didn't know that those were options for people.
I didn't even either till college, and I was in it. I was like, I just would have just known it as I was in care, like, you know, so.
Mary, I'll leave you with your final word on it. What would you say to anyone out there thinking about doing it?
Pick up the phone. Inquire, ask if it's for you. And I'd say it is for you, you just don't know it yet. You know, and especially like that, if you have someone on your own, it's company for you also. You know, as you say, there's plenty out there that can't have their own kids, do you know what I mean? But yeah, definitely pick up the phone, inquire if it's for you, and you'll never look back. Defo.
I love that. I know she's off camera, but if you could see her now, she's like an little angel sitting there, absolutely glowing. And Nicole, final word for you. Could I ask you, would you become a foster carer?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to do it. But like that, I'm still at home at the moment, so. But yeah, no, I definitely would. And I've actually spoke to him about it as well. And I think it's just, I just know like that, if it's something, maybe if I couldn't commit to it all the time, if it's just a respite or a short term, that you're making some sort of a difference, you know. But absolutely, I would.
That one good adult.
Yeah.
That's so what we need to do. So tell me now, let's finish up here and see what we have to say. So it's starting next week, or this week, going out this week. Yeah. So we're pre-recording this, everyone knows it's pre-recorded the week before. So it's going out the 29th of November.
The 29th of November. Okay. Dublin South Central Fostering Recruitment Campaign. We're doing 2 online sessions. So we're doing the first one on the 1st of December at 7:30 till 9 p.m. And then the next morning, the 2nd of December, we're doing 11 till 12:30 a.m. For anybody interested, I would just to register, use the details on eventbrite.ie. It's free to do it.
And we'll be there.
We'll be there, yeah, we'll be there. We do have a foster carer there as well, willing to come. And there'll be a social or fostering social worker. So it's what Nicole has in front of her is kind of very much, we do a little presentation about statistics and numbers and a little bit about the assessment and stuff like that, and then training that's involved. But then again, it's like questions put to Nicole and questions put to the foster carer. And it's, as Nicole said, it's very much the same, it's the same questions that come up. We do say to people, no question is a silly question, because if you're thinking it, if you ask it, somebody else is thinking it. So then they're the things, or else if it's not a case that you can make those online sessions, does fostering.ie. You can speak to a social worker there, or there's a free phone number. It's 1800 226 771. And I suppose I observed one of these online information sessions a couple of weeks ago for Dublin North and Ballymun, and one of the foster carers there said something and it stuck with me, and I just thought it was just, you know what I'm going to say, because I've said it to the guys that's doing this, and she just said, somebody asked about challenges that they may face, and she said, like, it comes, but you face it the way you would with your own children. She said something that she sticks by is patience and kindness, rinse and repeat. And I just thought that was lovely.
Patience and kindness, rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
And on that note, we'll end it there, ladies. Thank you all so much for sitting down with me. And you know what? If we can change one child's life through this, and as I said, I would urge everybody, we'll put the contact details out and we'll post it and we'll have all the information there. But thank you all for coming to my house tonight to sit down and talk about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.